Basic qualifications of a public officer. The Revised Administrative Code of 1987 mentioned 5 qualifications. A. Citizen of the Republic of the Philippines. B. At least 18 years of age at the time of application. C. Has not been found guilty of crime involving moral turpitude or of infamous, disgraceful, or immoral conduct, dishonesty, drunkenness, or addiction to drugs. D. Has not been found guilty of offenses relative to or in connection with the conduct of a civil service examination. And E. Has not been dismissed from the service for cause. These basic qualifications, however, are those only for appointive positions in the government. Because class, there are 2 ways that a public officer is chosen. First, election, and second is appointment. When we speak of election, class, it is very clear that in election, it should be natural-born citizen. However, pag appointment, like that of ano ba mga appointive position na nakikita nyo? Position ng doktor ng James B. Lingad Hospital, doktor ng Diosdado Macapagal Hospital, at ano pa yung mga posisyon sa opisina, like the city administrator, lahat ng mga hindi elective position. At pag sinabi nating elective, nandiyan na yung mayor, vice mayor, mga konsehal, governor, presidente, lahat yan dapat natural-born citizen. Okay? Ano ang kaibahan ng natural-born citizen at saka yung ordinaryong citizen lang? Kung ikaw ay ordinaryong citizen, you can be naturalized. Kahit hindi ikaw ay Pilipino, pwede kang maging Pilipino via naturalization procedure. Mahaba yung class at maraming requirements. Okay? But I am assigning the case or the case of Desiderio versus Comelec and Fernando Po Jr., GR 161434, to show you not only the citizenship of Fernando Po Jr., but also the history kung paano nanggaling yung ating citizenship. Okay? Maganda kasing storya actually. Pero I will simplify it for you to understand clearly. Dahil nung time na nag-file ng candidacy, ng Certificate of Candidacy, si FPJ class, he is being questioned whether siya ay natural-born citizen o hindi. Ganun lang kasimple ang kanilang argument. Okay? So ngayon, anong gusto nating ma-establish ito? First, we have to establish whether natural-born ba talaga si FPJ, the king of action movies. But you know, class, ito side story lang, of course. Side story. Si FPJ claim na hindi yan mahilig lumabas ng bansa. In fact, parang sinasabi nga, hindi siya lumabas ng Pilipinas. Ganun niya kamahal ang Pilipinas. So, he is truly loved by the masses. Sobra. Class, when I was in college, the first time I saw a movie by FPJ, class, believe me, hindi ako mahilig sa mga, I don't really appreciate much Filipino movies. But with FPJ, pumalakpak ako. I stood and clapped my hands after the movie together with halos karamihan lalaki kasi nanonood. So talagang napapalakpak ako because it was truly a great movie kapag puno na ang salop. Okay? It's a good movie, class. You should watch it. You should watch FPJ movies. Kung paano nanggagaling, how yung kanyang machismo, yung kanyang pagiging soft-spoken, gentleman. Yan ang mga characteristics ni FPJ. Okay? Setting aside, so, he is well-loved. He is well-loved. He traveled all around the Philippines doing movies. Kaya kilalang kilala si FPJ. And with that, eto na, kini-question ang kanyang pagiging natural-born citizen. But it is all kwento. Ano muna ba ang pinanggalingan? Ano ang history? Because, class, FPJ was born noong August 20, 1939. Ang bansa natin, class, maraming pinagdianan na constitution. Now, we have the 1987 Constitution. However, before the 1987 Constitution, there was 1972 and the 1935 Constitution. FPJ is governed by then 1935 Constitution because he was born 1939. So anong kailangan nating i-prove? We have to prove at we have to establish whether FPJ is a natural-born citizen. Okay? Ganun lang kasimple. Kailangan man at may establish. Pero paano natin siya may establish? Kasi kung titignan mo, sabi sa 1935 Constitution, those fathers, okay? Those fathers na ay Pilipino, therefore, ang anak nila ay Pilipino. Okay? Ano ba ang na-establish natin? Kailangan establish muna. Sabi, basta ang tatay mo Pinoy, noong 1935 Constitution, then Pinoy ka. Okay? Sabi doon, sa kanyang birth certificate, Pinoy ang tatay ni FPJ. At sino ba ang tatay ni FPJ? Si Alan Poe. Okay? Bakit kailangan yung tatay lang establish natin? Because it is already very, very clear that Blessy Kelly is an American. Yung nanay ni FPJ, Amerikana. So, doon lang tayo magkakaroon ng problema because, technically speaking, class, no issue sa nanay, Amerikana eh. So, pag na ngayon, na-prove na yung tatay ni FPJ ay hindi Pinoy, then FPJ is not a Filipino or is not a natural born. So, kaya kailangan tayong bumalik sa history. Ano ba ang history? Alan Poe's father is Lorenzo Poe, married to Martha Reyes. Both Spanish of origin. Parehong Espanyola ang mga lolo ni FPJ. So, posible, class. There is this big possibility na ang tatay ni FPJ ay Espanyol. Kasi kung ang tatay niya Espanyol, paano siya naging Pinoy? This is where our history comes in. During the December 10, 1898 Treaty of Paris, class, it is true that wala pa talagang citizenship na Pinoy nung panahon na yon. In fact, ang tawag nila sa atin ay Indio. Kung nababasa nyo yon sa mga libro na sinulat ng ating national hero na si Jose Rizal, ang tawag sa atin ay mga Indio, hindi pa tayo Pinoy. Nung Treaty of Paris, nung 1898, doon binili ng Amerika ang Pilipinas, kasama pa ang 5 bansa sa Espanya. Okay, ulitin ko, class, ha? Under the Treaty of Paris, it was only then that the US of A, the United States of America, bought 5 plus 1. Tayo yung plus 1. 5 bansa plus 1, tayo yun sa Spain para gawing teritoryo ng Amerika. However, hindi naman clear kung gagawin tayong teritoryo, pero binibili ang ating kalayaan. Okay? That was the only time na napunta, na cede, okay, that the Philippines were ceded or was ceded to the United States because of the Treaty of Paris. After that, class, nagkaroon tayong tinatawag natin na Philippine Bill of 1902 or the Philippine Organic Act of 1902 nung panahon ng April 11, 1899, saying, eto na, class, na lahat ng tao, ikaw man ay Spanish subject, native ka nung bansang iyon, or residing ka sa territory ng Spain. So, lahat class, lahat. Lahat ng tao sa loob ng Pilipinas, kung ikaw ay walang planong umalis, if you have no plans of leaving the country, then you are now considered a citizen of the Philippines. Doon unang lumabas nung sinabi ni William Taft at sinabi niyang Philippines are for Filipinos. Okay? Doon unang lumabas or doon unang na-coin yung term Filipino. Okay? So now, doon na na-consider na tayo ay Pinoy. Going back to the FPJ story. Ano-ano ba yung mga proof ngayon? Sigurado tayo na ang tatay ni FPJ ay si Alan Poe at Blessy Kelly. Blessy Kelly is an American. Alan Poe, not sure muna tayo, question mark. FPJ was born August 20, 1939, wherein the 1935 Constitution exists. At kailangan nating i-prove na ang tatay ni FPJ ay Pinoy, si Alan Poe. Sino ang tatay ni Alan Poe? Dito lumalabas na si Alan Poe, ang tatay niya ay si Lorenzo Poe, na namatay. Si Lorenzo Poe ay namatay noong September 11, 1954 at the age of 84. Okay? So, ulitin natin ha, 84 years old, si Lorenzo Poe, nung namatay siya noong September 11, 1954. Now, ibig sabihin, siya ay pinanganak noong 1870. Spanish regime, 1870. So, Espanyol, si Lorenzo Poe. Based din sa kanyang birth certificate, based din dun sa kanyang death certificate. Okay? Siya ay pinanganak ng, or namatay ng 84 years old at September 1954. So, questionable pa ang citizenship ni Lorenzo Poe. Pero ito yung mga facts, ito yung mga clear na senaryo. Okay? Una, kailangan muna nating i-prove kung talagang tatay or legitimate son ni FPJ. Actually, hindi siya kailangang i-prove kasi very clear ang 1935 Constitution. Na tatay mo lang ang maging Pinoy, Pinoy ka na. Okay? Pero bibigyan lang natin ng konting linaw yon, class. Because under that, kailangan munang ma-prove kung talagang anak si FPJ. Since walang pinakita na ebidensya yung nagki-question sa sa citizenship ni FPJ, now, nagpalabas ng prueba si FPJ saying, ako ay anak, legitimate na anak ni Alan Poe at ni Blessy Kelly. Through the sister of Blessy Kelly, who was the main witness saying they lived as a family. Okay? That ends the question, legitimate bang anak si FPJ? Because ang tinitira or ang kina-counter ng kanilang kalaban saying that FPJ is an illegitimate child. Dahil si FPJ pinanganak ng August 20, 1939, samantalang kinasal naman si Alan Poe and Blessy Kelly noong September 16, 1940, 1 year after. So yun yung mga question. But it was settled because no contrary to that facts was given by the petitioner on that issue. Okay? So claim natin, legitimate son si FPJ. Now, going back to the lolo, going back to Lorenzo Poe. Truly, class, okay, there are so many ways to prove, aside from birth certificate, marami kang pwedeng i-prove na nag-e-exist si Lorenzo Poe. However, wala silang makitang birth certificate and no other documentary evidence can be shown kung ano talaga ang citizenship ni Lorenzo Poe. However, there is one evidence and that is the death certificate saying Lorenzo Poe was 84 at the time of his death on September 11, 1954. Now, in the absence of any documentary evidence, kung ano yung available, yun ang ating i-interpret. So, it is very, very clear, class, it is very, very clear that Lorenzo Po died in the Philippines, specifically in San Carlos, Pangasinan. He died Filipino because, class, kahit na siya, di ba, sabi nga dun sa Organic Act of 1902, kahit na ikaw ay Espanyol or Spanish citizen ka, kung ikaw ay naiwan sa Pilipinas because of the Philippine Organic Act of 1902, ikaw ay Pilipino. Clear? Nagkakaintindihan tayo doon, ha? Regardless of the citizenship of Lorenzo Po, kahit siya ay Espanyol sa kanya by birth, but because of the Philippine Organic Act of 1902, which proves that Lorenzo Po stayed in the Philippines even after the Spanish regime, therefore, Lorenzo Po is a Filipino by law. At pag siya ay Filipino by law, at nanganak ang kanyang asawa, silang mag-asawa, therefore, ang anak niya ay Pilipino, which is Alan Po. And if Alan Po is a Filipino, therefore, because of the 1935 Constitution stating that the father of a Filipino citizen is a Filipino, then si Fernando Po ay Pilipino, thus making him a natural-born citizen, and therefore, he is eligible to run for presidency. Ganda, class, no? It is a very, very interesting case. It is a very, very illuminating case of the king of action movies. Okay? Sinishare ko lang ito, class, because it is truly history kasi. I really like history. Okay? Are we clear? Okay, moving forward, what is the next qualification? 18 years of age at the time of application. So class, very, madali lang siyang intindihin. At the time of application. So, ibig sabihin, kung ikaw ay 17, tapos gusto mo mag-apply sa isang government office, make sure that you are 18 during the time of the application. Hindi pwedeng ikaw ay below 18. Tandaan nyo, ha? Below 18. Pero 18 and above, pwede na. Okay? At the time of the application. Letter C. Has not been found guilty of crime involving moral turpitude or infamous, disgraceful, or immoral conduct, dishonesty, drunkenness, or addiction to drugs. Of course, madali ang addiction to drugs, madali ang drunkenness, madali ang dishonesty. But remember, class, the main operative word in this qualification is found guilty of a crime. Kailangan guilty ka of a crime. Hindi pa pwedeng you are innocent unless proven otherwise. Diba? Hindi ka naman nasampahan ng kaso. Guilty ka ba ng moral turpitude, ng immoral conduct, ng drunkenness, or addiction to drugs? If you are not guilty, class, then you are still qualified. Pero kung may court order na saying you are guilty of drunkenness, you are guilty of addiction to drugs, then you cannot be qualified as a public officer. Kaya lang we have to understand, ano ba yung moral turpitude? Okay, ano ba talaga ibig sabihin ng moral turpitude? Ang ibig sabihin, class, when you speak of moral turpitude, it includes everything which is contrary to justice, honesty, modesty, and good morals. Okay? It gravely violates justice, honesty, modesty, and good morals. Okay? Ganun lang kasimple. Pag bina-violate mo ang good morals at ikaw ay nasampahan ng kaso, then you are guilty of moral turpitude. For example, tumawid ka sa daan against the pedestrian. Dapat hindi ka doon tatawid. Dapat sa kabila ka. Di ba? Kung nakasuhan ka ng ano nga tawag doon? Jaywalking, then you are guilty of moral turpitude. Kung ikaw ay nakasuhan ng indecency, naglalakad kang hubad, then you are guilty of moral turpitude. Okay? Next is infamous. What is infamous? It is a bad quality, bad deed. Ikaw ay gumagawa ng hindi maganda. Guilty. Gaya nga ng example ko, pedestrian, di ba? Jaywalking. Yan. Disgraceful, nakakahiya. Ikaw ay nakakahiya. Immoral, contrary to morals, commonly accepted. Dito, class, maraming nakakasuhan dito kasi sometimes yung iba, yung mga disgraceful, medyo hindi masyadong kinakasuhan yan. Bihira ang nagkakaso dyan. Bihira yung nagiging guilty sa mga acts na yan. However, when we speak of immoral, dyan pumapasok yung mga nagkakaroon ng kabit at nakakasuhan. Of course, mayroong mga nakikiapid sa iyong kaopisina, then therefore, if you are found guilty, class, you are already disqualified to become a public officer. However, class, kaya nga sinasabi ko, mahirap ito at bibihira dun sa iba, except for the immorality. Because, class, you have to show na merong willful, flagrant, and shameless ang inyong action. Kailangan pinapakita nyo na talagang willful ka. Obvious. Diba? Obvious naman. Alam mo mali pinasok mo pa. Diba? Tapos, kung maglandian pa yung mga lovers, nakikita ng ibang tao. It is considered immorality because it shows moral indifference to the opinions of the good and respectable members of the community. Okay? Regardless kung ito ay scandalous or discreet manner. Okay? Kahit na pasimple kayo, pero alam naman ng mga tao, kayo. Well, it is still immoral, kailan discreet kayo. Okay? Yun yung difference no naghahalikan kayo or PDA. Next. Letter D, has not been found guilty of offenses relative to or in connection with the conduct of a civil service examination. Obviously, pag ikaw ay nangopya during the exam o gumawa ka ng kabalbalan para lang maipakita na ikaw ay eligible o makapasa ng civil service examination, then you are now disqualified from being a public officer. Okay? Disqualified ka na dahil pinakita mo doon pa lang sa exam, nandugas ka na or nag-cheat ka na. And letter E, has not been dismissed from the service for cause. Okay? Alalahanin mo, class, kung ikaw ay na-dismiss, okay? Na-dismiss ka naman, may dahilan. Ano naman? Acceptable naman. Okay? So, that's it. That wraps up our basic qualifications of a public officer. So, thank you.